Welcome to another Words of Hope pastoral conversation. My name is Brian Venton, and the subject for today is Providence, Plagues and Payback, taken from our continuing series from Psalm 91 verses 7 and 8. It says, 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only look with your eyes and see the recompense of the wicked. Now, the more I think about this psalm and the verses therein, the more I'm drawn into seeing their relevance for our times. I know from conversations I'm having with people that many are struggling to understand and make sense of our global circumstance and what it means for our personal lives. Today's text, I suggest, helps us understand how the providence of God extends to us in the midst of our life circumstance, but also that his providence extends far beyond what we could imagine, to the extent that the nefarious will be held to account and receive their just reward. As in previous verses, these verses describe a pretty dire set of circumstances. They speak of death happening all around us, and it also indicates that there are influences of evil intent. And we can see what's happening around us, and at some point justice will prevail on our behalf. Then in the middle of this text, there is this little phrase that just sits there and says this, but it will not come near you, or you won't be overcome by it. Now, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean that we can somehow engage in acts of stupidity and then expect God to look after us. God's providential care is never a license to do as we please. As one writer eloquently describes, here is no grounds, if the words be rightly understood, for any man absolutely to presume or conclude that he shall actually be delivered out of any particular danger, much less upon such a presumption willfully to run into danger. Even godly men are not exempted at such times to prevent rash judgments. Now, whilst we can never presume absolutely as if to somehow coerce God to act on our behalf, there are many biblical examples in history and contemporary experience where God does intervene, sometimes in spite of us, and in some instances at our behest or by our importunity, in order to fulfill his divine purpose, not ours. Now, that is really encouraging. This, I suggest, we can expect, but not according to our own presumption or attempts to manipulate God as a means of convenience for our pleasure or self-interest. On the other hand, it does mean that as we go about our daily lives in the providence of God, we can have an expectation and a confidence that his hand of protection can be upon us as we let him guide us in our decision-making along life's journey. For example, on those occasions when we need to discern the difference between truth and error, or to find wisdom when we are unsure what to do, or to find guidance when we stand at the crossroads of life, or to find hope when we've lost our way, or to make good when all seems unsalvageable, or to find strength when we're under attack or being abused, and so on. The list is endless. God's providence can be defined as his caring provision for his people as he guides them in their journey of faith through life, so his will can be accomplished in and through us. I want to give you another illustration from the past of how this worked out in France when a plague ravaged the city of Marseille back in 1720. In my reading, I've come across many of these sorts of stories that speak eloquently in the ways in which I'm describing here. Bishop Belsunce so distinguished himself for his humanity during the plague which raged that city that the regent of France offered him a richer and more honourable see of Leon in Picardy. But he refused it, saying he should be unwilling to leave a flock that had been endeared to him by their sufferings. His pious and intrepid labours are commemorated in a picture in the town hall of Marseille, in which he is represented in his episcopal habit, attended to by his almoners, giving his benedictions to the dying. But perhaps the most touching picture still in existence of the bishop's humane labours is to be found in a letter of his own hand written to the Bishop of Soissons in September 27, 1720. He writes, "Never was desolation greater, nor was ever anything like this. There have been many cruel plagues, but none was ever more cruel. To be sick and dead was almost the same thing. What a melancholy spectacle have we on all sides. We go into the streets full of dead bodies, half rotten through, which we pass to come to a dying man, in the hope to excite him to an act of contrition and to give him absolution." Then the record says, "Notwithstanding the exposure to a pestilence so fatal, the devoted bishop escaped uninjured." Now we can all postulate the what-ifs and the buts or the how it comes, or say, well, that was back then and my circumstance is different today. However, we can't argue that the God who protected the bishop in 1720 is any different than the God who wants to presence himself today in yours and my life. He extends his providential care to each one of us, as he has done throughout history. But note, God's care also extends even further, for we're told in verse 8 that those who seek intentional and devious harm to our lives will at some point also be held to account and brought to justice. I was taken with the Amplified translation of verse 8, where it says this: "You will only be a spectator as you look on with your eyes and witness the divine payment of the wicked, as you watch safely from the shelter of the Most High." This is a great message of hope for those of us who feel so overwhelmed by what is happening around us. No matter what happens in the now or the future, the providence of God's care over us is real, and his providence extends his sovereign purposes to the broader affairs of this world. Even though injustice, wrongdoing, and hypocrisy abounds, and even though we are being forced to face off with global and national nefarious agenda, we can hug into God, knowing all things are under his control, as we watch safely from the shelter of the Most High. Now, I hope this makes sense for you, and I trust that you have again found this chat helpful. Feel free to contact me if you need to have a chat. Subscribe to my channel and share this video to your friends so they can be blessed as well. Until next week, may God bless you, and thanks once again for taking the time to watch this video. God bless, and bye.